2nd Virginia Infantry Regiment?
Well, the 2nd Virginia Infantry has a special interest to me because I'm a local boy. Now, I have to admit, I didn't grow up in the lower Shenandoah Valley, but I was as close as could be, a stone's throw across the Potomac River in Washington County, Maryland. That is where I'm from. I feel some affinity to the 2nd Virginia Infantry because of Henry Kidd Douglas. Henry Kidd Douglas also grew up in Washington County, Maryland, and he ultimately went across the Potomac River from his home at Ferry Hill and joined the Shepherdstown Company of the 2nd Virginia Infantry, which was Company B, the Hamtramck Guard. So this was my opportunity to learn about and study the boys who fought with Stonewall Jackson throughout the war, who came from the local area that I was very familiar with. And with my association with Harpers Ferry and working with the National Park Service there for years, and my association with Shepherd College and being a graduate of Shepherd with a degree in history, I had this personal interest and affinity in the 2nd Virginia Infantry. Plus, my professor, one of my principal professors at Shepherd College when I was there, was Dr. Millard Bouchon. And one of the very first writers to discuss the 2nd Virginia Infantry and to bring about their very illustrious history was Dr. Bouchon in his very famous book that he wrote on Jefferson County. And so I wanted to do more research. Dr. Bouchon in the 1970s whetted my appetite, but I wanted to really dig into who these people were, learn about them individually, find out who comprised those stones that made up that stone wall that stood there so firmly on Henry Hill. I was given the opportunity in the early 1980s. A history teacher named Harold Howard, a Virginian. In fact, he actually had been named the History Teacher of the Year for the state of Virginia. Lynchburg. Harold had worked at Appomattox National Battlefield, and Harold had this great interest in Virginia soldiers. He himself was a descendant of a Virginian who had served in the 2nd Virginia Cavalry. And he really loved the personal. He wanted to talk about individual soldiers. So Harold Howard, a history teacher, conceived the idea of creating a series of books on Virginia regiments. And his idea was to have not just a chronological narrative of these different regiments, but also to try to identify every man who served in that regiment during the course of the war, and to put it in writing, to give yourself not just the narrative, but also a roster of the soldiers. And so Harold contacted me because he knew of my interest in the Valley troops, and specifically Stonewall Jackson, and asked if I would be interested in writing for his series. Well, I was in my early 20s, and being a historian, the opportunity to write a book about my own backyard and about the people who became so famous as part of the Stonewall Brigade was very exciting to me. And so I agreed. I accepted the challenge and began researching in detail the 2nd Virginia Infantry. Spent a huge amount of time in the National Archives working with what's known as the compiled service records, which were the records of those men. It go everything from the time they enlisted to the time that they fought on the battlefields, through their rosters, through whether they became a prisoner of war or whether they may have been in a field hospital or whether they died during the war from disease. All those kinds of records are available in the National Archives, and they were put together in what's known as a compiled service record. But for the Virginia troops, it had never been published. This information was not out there. So this was primary source information that had yet really been illuminated. And so every soldier that I had an opportunity to research was an exciting venture for me. And then, of course, actually learning about the story of the regiment itself, from its initiatives, its inauguration early in the war, all the way through Appomattox, was an exciting ride. And so I was very fortunate to have published the 2nd Virginia Infantry, which is part of the Virginia Regimental series. This was actually the 7th book published in that series, and it came out, the initial edition, in 1984. And so I've been working with and been fascinated by the 2nd Virginia Infantry for close to 30 years now, and they have many stories to tell.